absolute nationwide terror.
Computer systems completely hijacked.
A significant number of casualties.
Every phone in America displayed the same haunting message. This will happen again.
0 Day tackles some really interesting real-world political intrigue and conspiracy, but was there one particular incident that inspired the story?
Not an incident in real life, certainly. I mean, obviously, it's hard not to invoke, our memories of 9/11 throughout, certainly. But what it really, I think, came out of was conversations Noah Oppenheim, my co-creator and friend, were having at the time. This is, late 2021, about our relationship as a nation with the truth. And the fact that we were moving very quickly towards a state of being where two truths exist contemporaneously and they're mutually exclusive and they are diametrically oppositional in many cases, and yet they must coexist. And that's a scary idea that, that we are now entitled to our own truths. And so from that came the creation of this story and character of a person, a good person in the middle of this horrible event, trying to discern fact from fiction when the mechanism by which we do that is broken, and trying to take what data they can get and make the right decision. So it definitely was born of a condition that we feel is, it's one of the big challenges that I think we face as not just a nation, but as a civilization, because I think it goes beyond America.
Robert, not only are you executive producing this, this is, I think, your first foray into TV.
Well, I've done small stuff, but yeah, this
not on this level.
Like this, no.
What about this project made you say, I'm all in?
Well, it started where I was just wanting to live in New York for 5 or 6 months and work. And my agent said, well, that would probably be a limited series thing. And so he introduced me to Eric, and Eric told me he had an interesting idea, and it was. So he sent me a kind of an overview of it, a treatment, and it was good, smart. It included, Noah Oppenheim, who was the head of NBC News at one point, and Michael Schmidt, who was a Pulitzer Prize journalist for the New York Times. They know the world well, and so I knew I was in good hands as far as the writing would be, and it was smart, and so this would be a good project.
No, it absolutely is. In fact, your character has such an interesting arc because not only is he investigating this horrible, event that happened, but he's also got these complicated family ties and some mental health struggles that are baked in. How do these personal struggles shape his journey?
Well, it was part of the ups and downs of his character. But when you do this type of thing, a limited series, you have more time to go into all this stuff as opposed to just skirting over this because you don't really have the time. And so that made him more human, if you will, and people could identify with those elements based on their own lives. And so it was good. It was all done well, as I say, intelligently. These guys did a really terrific job, and so it's all good.
Last question. How much of Robert connects with George?
Well, it's not like I've seen enough of politicians and met enough, seen a lot on television, especially these days, interviews all over the place, public statements, all kinds of speeches. It gives you a lot of insight into how people are handling things, and then when it's commented on and contradicted by journalists and pundits, you get a good, rounded kind of picture about what they've done and where they might have avoided something, or sidestepped something, or went right into it. So it was good. It gave me a good feeling of the nature of being in that position. I don't know if that was answering your question exactly.
Yeah, and I also wanted to make sure that I was curious about how you yourself related to any aspects of George.
Yeah, I mean, I relate. We talked about this that the character I was playing is respected, honest, not a. And that's why even though he only had one term, it was because of something that happened. I don't want to give it away, but he was respected. He was an ex-prosecutor, and Angela Bassett's character thought he'd be the right person to head the commission. So, because it was pretty intense.
If the mob storms the castle and comes for all of our heads, everyone's gonna be in trouble.
How did it feel when you found out you were going to play Robert De Niro and Joan Allen's daughter?
It's really surreal. It remains really surreal. I have been such a fan of both of theirs. I mean, they're both in some of my all-time favorite movies. So yeah, it was crazy. It's crazy.
It's so crazy?
I recognize it remains crazy. Yes, it'll be crazy forever.
Do you have any favorite moments with either one of them? On screen or off?
We did this one trip before we started shooting. The only cast members who were there were Joan and I. And Bob invited us and the producers up to his upstate place. And it was great. I mean, obviously, it was great. But just to like get to spend more time with them and to start conversations about some of these things. But I had really a blast every day on set. It was like the vibe on set was so upbeat. The crew was so happy to be there, like as happy to be there as the rest of us. It just didn't have that like, sometimes you have to remind yourself during long days, like, we're lucky to be here. It's a dream to get to do this. It wasn't like that. Like, it just felt great. Like, we were shooting in New York City in these incredible locations. The whole thing was definitely, like, pinch me moments. And then there's been, like, a series of fun cast dinners that, again, remain like, I can't believe I get to sit at this table with these people.
Well, you did an incredible job.
Thanks.
Alexandra is both a congresswoman as well as the daughter of like this well-revered former president. How does she navigate that? How does she play both sides of the fence?
I mean, not well. Yeah, I think that she's really misguided. I think that her intentions are oftentimes not bad, and in fact are kind of noble. But how she goes about doing things, and I don't think many people would agree with. I personally, obviously, don't agree with him. But I think that most people can relate, like, how we all sort of see our parents, we all go through these phases, and sometimes these phases become permanent where we think we know better, they're from a different generation, they don't know how things work, they don't know how the world is these days, they're operating from a completely outdated playbook. That is how Alex feels about her father. The arrogance to assume that is definitely her fatal flaw. And while I can understand why you would feel that way about your parent, and not everybody is in the situation where that parent happens to be like the former president of the United States, but I do think that she would have benefited more from listening to his wisdom than trying to tell him all the stuff she assumed he didn't know.
Absolutely. Speaking of people who make bad decisions, Alexandra's boyfriend, she has a very complicated relationship with Roger Carlson, who was played wonderfully, by the way, by Jesse Plemons. Their on-again, off-again relationship, like love, hate, what is it? Is it just familiar? What is it between the two of them?
I think it's really complicated and deep and old. I think there are very few people in the world that can really identify with their lives outside of each other and her brother, who passed away before our story begins. So I think they're really bonded. I think they're trauma bonded. I also think they're bonded by these shared experiences. Not all of them were negative. A lot of them were probably really fun. I think they enjoy getting up to no good with each other and probably have for many, many, many years. And that was something that Jesse and I talked about a lot. We wanted to convey this sense of like deep, rich history between these two people, even though you don't get to spend that much time with them on screen. And you don't get to spend any time with them on screen that isn't pretty much directly related to putting out these massive fires.
What do you think is the most challenging scene for you in this series? Was it one with Jesse, or was it more ones with maybe Robert?
Definitely Jesse and I really worked hard to get to get it right and try to strike certain chords. So I think we were very precise with what we were trying to do. But then the scene with Bob, which I think ended up being in episode 6, in Alex's apartment in the dark, that was definitely the most daunting scene. That was the one that I just saw on the schedule. It was like looming, and I was a lot more relaxed when it was over.
It was very intense, and it was just you and Robert De Niro. So that was, I can see, but you did great.
Thanks.
You did great.
Thanks.
What do you think, like so much of this show parallels real life? I mean, even your name, Alexandra, I'm like, did they name her for?
No comment.
Did you find yourself, you shot this a couple of years ago. Did you find yourself looking at the news going, wow?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some things that have happened since we wrapped up shooting that we talked about in the show that are now like coming true. And it's definitely like the project that I would put last on the list of things that I've done that I would want anything in it to come true. But yeah, this is the world that we're living in. We touch on a lot of these topics, like what could possibly have gotten this country to this point, and it's the point that we are currently in. So, yeah.
We've talked a lot about how Alexandra relates to other characters, but what do you think Alexandra ultimately wants?
I think that she wants positive, good things. I think she wants this country to come together in a way that feels like it hasn't happened in so many years. It's like almost a distant memory at this point, even though it's actually not that long ago that it felt like the whole point of government was to try to reach across the aisle and hear each other and try to work towards solutions that made sense for the most number of people rather than just your side or your team. And I think that is truly deep down what she wants.
Awesome. And if there is one thing that you would want audiences to take away from this film, what would you want them to take away from the show?
I guess I want people to be thinking about these things and more aware of them. And yes, maybe a bit nervous about them. We really do blindly trust a lot of these institutions, especially around tech. And I think it's important for us to never stop questioning whether or not they have our best interests at heart.
This is the greatest affront to civil liberties ever attempted.
Ex-President George Mullen is not only a wannabe tyrant, he's a deeply troubled man.
My first question is, even though you rehearsed and shot this show a year ago, 2 years ago, how interesting is it turning on the news and looking at, life imitating art, imitating life?
Oh,
what is that like?
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. I can tell you when I first read the script, I was sent the pilot to direct, and I read it and went, oh my God, every page, I couldn't wait for the next page, and I know what was going to happen next. And, coming from years of doing Homeland, which is very researched and, realistically real reality based. I love that it had that, but it asked such important questions in the time we're in. So for me, I signed on immediately. I was thrilled they sent it to me and began developing the next 5 hours with Eric and Noah and Michael and of course Robert De Niro, which was a joy, all of them. So it was a very collaborative process. And yes, we started this out. Kamala Harris was not running for president when Angela Bassett was cast as president. But I think the things that are really important is that I'd ask a very important question is, what is truth in a post-truth world? How do we communicate when we can't agree on what is fact and what is fiction and opinion? And until we can listen to each other, how do you have a conversation? So I love that we are telling a story about that, which is a thriller. It is a paranoid conspiracy thriller. So you've got that great engine to hook everything on based on something realistically real, which of course I read every book about zero-day events before jumping in, but with these very compelling characters.
Okay, we're going to need you to direct something very calm, very peaceful.
Yes.
Next time.
I'm doing something very, very different next.
Matthew, Richard Dreyer, Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
he really doesn't get along with Mullen. What happened there? What happened before the show started between the two of them?
Well, I think they were good friends. I think that they were two people who would have, maybe if one was far left and one was far right, they did find ways to shake hands and do what was best for the country. But Dreyer has drifted into a place where he thinks in order to fix it is to deconstruct it, to destroy it, create some fear, and use that fear as a weapon to manipulate people into doing something different. I think maybe, yeah, but I do think that there's a mutual admiration, 100%, that they admire one another. They just see things different. But the problem with Dreyer is, if I may, is that he's kind of existing in a world where I'm right, you're wrong, I'm smart, you're stupid, and that's not a conversation. That's a fight. And for American democracy to function in a way that gives people confidence in the institution, there has to be a discussion. And those people that we elect to those offices need to listen to the people that put them in that position. They're not above the law. They're not separate from the law. They're human beings that are elected to help guide the country to sustainability and protect the people, not harm them. And I think that Dreyer felt it was okay maybe to harm people. I mean, thousands of people get killed in order to fix this.
Do the ends justify the means?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And also, we do try to stay away from any partisan politics.
Yeah.
That, to me, one of the best scenes, one of my favorite scenes in the show is with Dreyer and Mullen at the end. And they both are saying things that are true. No one's in a white hat or a black hat, and that it makes it a very compelling conversation.
Even the way you framed it, with them both standing on either, and you can see just the monument standing between them is just excellent. Was that your favorite scene as well?
Oh, I love that scene. Just because I get an opportunity to work with Robert De Niro.
Yes.
What was originally we were going to shoot? It was raining that day, so we had to find
what happened? It was originally set
like a park bench, wasn't it?
At a park bench, looking out over Potomac Park.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's not very interesting. So I got everyone back in the van and thought, we need something that is monumental, that feels governmental, that brings another element to the storytelling visually. And we found that place up in the Bronx.
That was because it was raining.
No, it helped that we had a place to, I would have... Yeah. I did it for you all.
It was monumental.
I did it to not have them get wet.
I mean, it's literally called Monument Hall. I think because there's all the busts of
it was perfect.
Yeah. Oh, good, because I literally went, this isn't right. I don't feel that this environment is adding to the storytelling.
Matthew, I gotta ask, would Dreyer fund Dr. Brenner's research?
Probably.
From Stranger Things and MK Ultra?
That's a really good question. I do think that Dreyer would probably think that there is something to the paranormal, and there wouldn't be any harm in experimenting with young children, maybe kidnapping a couple from bad homes. I feel
a crossover event. Yeah. That's what I think is happening.
I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Now, we talked about your favorite scenes. Were there any particularly challenging ones that you both had to deal with? Okay, let's hear one.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again, I love being a storyteller. I feel blessed that I was part of telling this particular story. I would say a couple of the things that were really challenging. The first scene where De Niro, who's been basically leading a quiet life for 12 years. Mullen is out of the public eye. He has a ritualized existence. He's supposed to be writing. And now he's going to come in the public eye again as he goes to this subway site. And dealing with the scale of that place, to show the disaster, and then to give this speech, which I think Bob does an amazing job, that feels really grounded and real, and the kind of thing you want a leader to say, but he is not expecting to be back in the public eye. To me, the balance of that was a really wonderfully challenging, and that was all shot in one day. So that was, you know, a great challenge. And then the other one was the scene at his house at night when the protesters attacked the car. So that just on a logistic level, but also on an emotional level. I mean, to see what felt a bit like the January 6th, you know, attack, but in that context was really chilling. And knowing these are actors and background and this is all staged, there was too close to reality there.
And I just actually have to ask about the previous scene you just mentioned, the one where he gives that speech. I heard that in reality, people thought that that was an actual protest and that he was actually screaming at people. Is that true?
That it was picked up by social media, and it had something to do with the Israeli-Gaza conflict, but it had nothing to do with that. It was a scene in our story about a zero-day event.
Wow, that's incredible. Last question. What do you want audiences to come away with?
Ooh, good question. First of all, I hope they enjoy the ride all the way through, the thriller that it is, but I hope there's conversation at the end of it. You know, whatever the conversation is, and maybe being able to see something in a different way. You know, but you know, I definitely want people, it's an entertainment, but it also has some stuff there too.
Wonderful.
There are a lot of people who feel that we're in a really dark space right now. My mom used to say that the room is full of monsters and it's scary, and it just takes turning the light on to make the monsters go away. And so those people who are feeling despair and worried, reach for the light switch, you know, and turn it on, and find other people that can help you turn that light on, make the monsters go away. Because running away from it doesn't make it go away. That you have to address it, and that would make us a better nation if we always reach for that light. And that's what Leslie's done with this show, is turned the light on and helped us to see a way out of it.
That's a beautiful way of saying that.
Sir, is there something going on here that you're not telling me about?
Prove to me you are of sound mind, or I will tell the country that you are not.
Zero Day is run by women. I'm looking at Angela Bassett as the president.
Yeah.
We got Connie Britton, who is, I believe, chief of staff. Lizzy Caplan, who plays your daughter, is a powerful congresswoman. And then you, Joan, are a force as Sheila, George Mullen's wife. What was it like working with this incredible cast every day?
It was just a joy to come to work every day. Every person that was cast, and these women, you know, in particular, just smart, strong, kind. And we were led by an incredible woman, Lesli Glatter, who directed all 6 episodes. And it was wonderful having her be at the helm and know that she was going to be there for the whole thing and carry us through and have a united vision about what the entire piece was about. And that was really terrific.
It was written so well.
Yeah.
Did Leslie allow you to improv at all, or was it really all there on the page?
It was really all there on the page. I really didn't do any improving. You know, when it's that good, you just kind of memorize your lines and show up and hit your mark. But yeah.
But you did an incredible job. Sheila has such an interesting, strained, I would say, but loving relationship with George. Like, there's subtle things that you see, like they're in the same house, but they're not in the same bed.
Yeah.
She's not always staying there. It's very obvious. After everything they've been through, why does she stay?
I think because they've lived through a lot. Good things, bad things, tragic things. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of mutual respect and admiration that they share for each other's intelligence, advice. I think she is his most trusted advisor. And after so many years, I mean, their relationships can evolve into all different kinds of forms. And I think there's a tremendous amount of love still between the two of them. It may be not, you know, that torrid, you know, I'm ripping our clothes off kind of thing, but there's a tremendous amount of deep love and abiding love and historical love and care and concern for each other's well-being. And she will do
most anything, I think, to make sure that he's protected and taken care of. And I think he's doing his best, the same for her. So it works for them. Relationships can take all different kinds of forms.
They can.
Really.
One of the choices that she makes to help take care of him, you have an incredible scene with Connie Britton when Sheila asks Valerie to go back to work for him. That scene is so powerful, and there's things that they say and things that they don't say. Can you just share a little history about how you work through that scene? Because there's so many unsaid things there, and there's that electricity that you have with Connie in that scene is so palpable.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. Thank you. I'm glad you got that. We got to have some good discussions before we shot the scene with Lesli, Connie, and I, and Lesli talking about, again, what was their relationship many years ago. These women were friends before, things kind of went sideways. And so actually, I think as long as we've been doing this for a long time, sometimes you don't have to have hours and hours and days of conversation. If you have just enough where you get the basics and you're each on the same page, you kind of can fill in a lot when you're with another great actor like Connie Britton is. She's extraordinary. And so you just trust each other, and we try different things, and it just works. You kind of take a leap of faith that the person's going to be there with and for you, and you're going to be there with and for them, and together try to make something, make the scene work and make it the best that it can be.
I'm very curious because so much of this looks so much like real life, which is terrifying occasionally.
Yeah.
Did you pattern Sheila after any person in real life? Did you study any point in history that you said, that's a first lady that I could probably pattern my character after?
I didn't in any great depth. Of course, I thought of certain women in history and their strength and intelligence, but I didn't pull out biographies or read about anything. I just took about what was on the page. I kind of pulled from at my own age. It's like, you've lived through some things. You can kind of hold yourself, use those things for the work that you're doing now. And again, I keep going back to our wonderful director, Lesli Glatter, who was so grounding and so helpful. And the writing was good, so it's kind of on the page as when you even read it.
Was this your first time working with Robert De Niro?
It was, yeah.
I feel like it's so funny because I feel like you guys were so good. It's like you've done this before. What was your favorite scene to work on with him?
Oh, wow. I think my favorite scene was seen in the first episode where we've had a dinner party and they're asking if he wants to. The president has wanted him to head this commission up, and he hasn't decided yet. And I come in and I've kicked my shoes off and I lean across the bed, and we have this consultation between the two of us, like, well, this is what I think, and this is what I think she wants from you. It's very intimate. It's very who they are. They're talking about, an extremely important decision that he could make that is, she understands the gravity of. And but I like the mixture of that. And, it's after the party, her shoes are off, she's lying on the bed, she's just kind of leaning over, and they're having this conversation in the midst of that.
But she had some very important things to say in that scene.
Yes, she did.
Very powerful.
Yes, she did.
Finally, I want to ask you about Sheila's relationship with her daughter, because Alexandria, she's going through it in this show.
She is.
But she has a very strained relationship with George, but not with her mother, not with Sheila. How would you describe working with Lizzy and also that mother-daughter relationship?
I think I would say the mother-daughter relationship is not uncomplicated. I think there are complications in it, but I think her politics are visible because she's a congresswoman, a congressperson, and with Bob's situation being the head of the commission, they're in a more public forum of, decisions that Congress is making that can affect the commission. It's much more complicated. And I think as a mother, With the daughter, I think there's a little bit more, yeah, she's feeling something right now. I'm going to give it a day and I'll circle back. I think there's a little more intuition, a little more, oh, maybe this isn't the right moment. You know, oh, okay, I'll wait a minute and talk to you tomorrow. Okay. I think there might be a little more kind of that sort of operating, a little more, you know, as woman to woman, sort of reading her daughter and seeing when is a good moment, when is not a good moment, when should I come in, when shouldn't I? And you know, they have a complicated family history, which gets revealed as the series goes on. So there's that element that is also present.